The Jetsons is remembered as a cute slice of retro-futurism, but the real story behind this show is far stranger than anything Orbit City ever put on screen. Hidden lawsuits, recycled gags, architectural borrowing, and a network gamble that almost nobody could even watch in color. The making of this cartoon was chaos wrapped in chrome. Yet somehow, this single-season experiment rewired how entire generations imagined the future. The gadgets, the lifestyle, the world of tomorrow aesthetic. Technology didn't predict the Jetsons. It followed it. So buckle up, because these are 16 weird facts about the Jetsons, the cartoon that accidentally built the future far more than it ever portrayed it.
I found a weird-looking rock under that boulder over there.
Number 1. The Fired Jetsons. Before George and Jane ever sounded like the voices we know today, Hanna-Barbera had actually hired Maury Amsterdam and Pat Carroll to play the leads. They recorded at least one full episode and had contracts promising payment for 24 more. Then everything fell apart. The studio abruptly replaced them, blaming vague sponsor conflicts, even though neither actor had been warned or given a chance to fix anything. Both performers sued Hanna-Barbera for breach of contract, demanding the full season's salary and damages. The case dragged on for years, and in the end, the court ruled against them. Their recordings were shelved, their versions of George and Jane vanished, and the Jetsons family we know today only exists because the original cast was quietly erased before the show even aired.
With the boss coming to supper and me trying to make him think we're poor?
Number 2. NBC powered the Jetsons color broadcast ABC, promoted the Jetsons as its big color television breakthrough. But there was one embarrassing problem. ABC didn't actually have the color broadcast infrastructure to air it. They wanted a futuristic show, but their own network couldn't transmit in the future. So every week, ABC had to send the finished episodes across town to NBC, a direct rival, because NBC owned the only color facilities capable of handling the job. NBC processed the prints, converted them to a live color signal, and fed them back to ABC over AT&T lines so ABC could air its Space Age series. It remains one of the strangest broadcast arrangements of the era. A competitor secretly powering the color debut of the Jetsons' entire world, while most viewers at home were still watching in black and white.
I'll write you from Saturn.
Number 3. Rosie became a star after only 2 episodes. In the original 1962 to 1963 run, Rosie the robot barely exists. She appears in the pilot, returns once for Rosie's boyfriend, and then vanishes from the entire season. No recurring plots, no background cameos, not even a quick walk-on. On paper, she was never meant to be a major character, but the audience response blindsided the studio. Kids loved her design. Adults loved the satire of a robotic maid. And early merch campaigns pushed Rosie harder than characters who appeared 20 times more often. She became the unofficial symbol of Jetson-style futurism long after her episodes stopped airing. By the time the show entered decades of reruns, Rosie's reputation had grown so huge that the 1980s revival brought her back as a regular. One of the most iconic characters in Jetsons history became a legend, off just 2 original appearances.
There's some kind of monster loose in this house.
Number 4, Orbidy was added to 1962 episodes. Decades later. If you watch the Jetsons today, you'll see title cards featuring Orbidy, the little spring-legged alien pet. But here's the catch. Orbidy didn't exist in 1962. He was created more than 20 years later for the 1980s revival. When Hanna-Barbera re-released the original episodes in syndication, they produced brand new title cards to make the whole show look consistent. And instead of keeping the 1962 artwork, they accidentally, or maybe lazily, used the 1980s character designs for every episode, even the old ones. That's why Orbidy shows up on modern openings for stories he never appears in. On paper, he isn't part of the 1962 world at all. But thanks to the updated title cards, millions of people now think he was always there.
Hey, maybe this thing is cleared up by itself.
Number 5. Astro's real name was Trollfaz. Astro wasn't always the lovable, goofy space dog we know. In the episode Millionaire Astro, the show drops a surprising piece of canon. He originally belonged to wealthy tycoon J.P. Gotrockets, who named him Trollfaz. According to the script, it was supposedly the name of Gotrocket's lawyer, which explains why Astro hates it so much. The episode turns that name into a running humiliation gag. Whenever someone calls him Trollfaz, Astro practically collapses in embarrassment, giving the writers a chance to poke fun at overstuffed, ultra-rich futurism. It's one of the few times the show reveals anything about Astro's past. By the end, Astro chooses the Jetsons over a life of ridiculous luxury, and the name Trollfaz becomes an inside joke the series never lets him forget. A strange reminder that he once belonged to the richest man in Orbit City.
The defense has failed to refute the claims of my client.
Number 6. Astro and Rosie never share a single story. You'd expect the Jetsons' two most iconic side characters, the family dog and the family robot, to appear together constantly. But in the entire original 1962-63 season, Astro and Rosie never share the screen in the same episode. Not once. This wasn't a creative choice. It was a production strategy. Hanna-Barbera was working with tight budgets, limited animation cycles, and strict layout constraints. Adding too many characters to a scene increased drawing complexity, camera setups, and cell counts, all expensive for primetime TV in 1962. The result is a strange bit of Jetsons trivia. The dog and the robot who defined the show's identity never actually interact in the original run. Only decades later in the revival do they finally appear side by side.
I don't remember having a dust rag this color.
Number 7. The Jetsons borrowed the future from real Los Angeles. Orbit City may float miles above the ground, but its look wasn't invented by Hanna-Barbera. The artist pulled heavily from Southern California's Googie and space-age architecture, especially the futuristic buildings popping up around Los Angeles in the late 1950s and early 60s. You can see it immediately. The LAX theme building, John Lautner's Chemosphere House, and the neon angles of coffee shops along Sunset Boulevard all show up, just lifted into the sky. Even some of the show's flying saucer homes resemble actual restaurants and car washes that were being built around the animators' own neighborhoods. This is why the Jetsons' world feels strangely familiar. It wasn't a fantasy. It was Los Angeles, exaggerated, elevated, and dressed in chrome. The future wasn't imagined. It was traced. Before we continue, here's where the Jetsons gets even stranger. The next facts go deep into lawsuits, studio decisions, and some of the oddest production choices Hanna-Barbera ever made. And if you're enjoying this, take a second to hit the hype button. It helps push this video to more people. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into these classic shows. It genuinely helps the channel grow. All right, let's keep going.
Because the boss is a penny-pinching old crab, that's why.
Number 8. Disney's futurism shaped the Jetsons' world. The Jetsons' gadgets didn't appear out of nowhere. Hanna-Barbera's team drew heavily from 1950s futurist propaganda, especially Disney's TV specials. One of the biggest influences was Magic Highway USA, a 1958 Disneyland episode packed with automatic roads, moving sidewalks, wall-sized screens, and flying commuter pods that look almost identical to what Orbit City later used. The studio also borrowed ideas from futurist newspaper strips like Closer Than We Think by Arthur Radebaugh, which imagined everything from picture phones to mechanized homes. The animators weren't predicting the future. They were remixing the glossy, optimistic futurism already flooding American media. That blending created a world that felt both familiar and impossible. Every Jetsons invention had a real-world ancestor, but the show assembled them into a future that seemed believable, logical, and strangely inevitable, which is why so much of it ended up coming true.
It's new order and get home.
Good luck, dear. Bye.
Number 9. The mother-in-law gag was lifted from Tex Avery. One of the funniest bits in the Jetsons comes in the episode The Space Car, when George's mother-in-law gets a detachable seat pod so she can ride as far away from him as possible. It's a perfect Jetsons joke, clean, fast, and futuristic, but the setup isn't original at all. The entire gag is taken almost beat for beat from Tex Avery's 1951 cartoon Car of Tomorrow. Same concept, same staging, even the same "keep her away from me" punchline. Hanna-Barbera didn't just reference Avery, they practically redrew his work with Jetsons characters and called it new. This kind of borrowing happened all the time in early TV animation, but this is one of the clearest cases. A joke that started as a wild Tex Avery idea ended up becoming one of the most memorable laughs in Orbit City.
I should have all the answers for you in about 10 minutes.
Number 10. George Jetson's overworked life was a joke about automation. In the original 1962 episodes, George constantly complains about being exhausted, stressed, and overworked, even though his entire job is literally pushing a single button for a few hours a day. Episodes like Millionaire Astro even show his workday ending at 3 p.m., with George acting like he survived a brutal shift. This wasn't random humor, it was a satire of 1960s automation culture. Futurists at the time believed machines would handle almost every task, leaving humans with nothing to do but fill the empty hours. The big problem of tomorrow wasn't unemployment, it was boredom, leisure, and people forgetting how to work at all. The Jetsons exaggerated that idea into comedy, turning George into the world's laziest, overworked employee. It was a joke about the future at the time, and today it feels strangely familiar.
You burn the toast again.
Now, don't start telling me about your mother's breakfast.
Number 11. The Jetsons' ages sparked a strange debate. Digging into the original 1962 episodes reveals one of the show's oddest bits of hidden continuity: the exact ages of the Jetson family. In test pilot, George is confirmed to be 40. In Rosie the Robot, Jane casually mentions she's 33. And Judy, despite many later references saying 16, is clearly stated as 15 in multiple early scripts. Fans didn't think much of it until the math resurfaced decades later. If George is 40 and Jane is 33 and Judy is 15, then Jane had Judy at 18 and George was 25. For a modern audience, it feels surprising, but in the early 1960s, that age gap was actually common, especially in family sitcoms. What started as a throwaway detail in 2 episodes became a full-blown discussion years later. A simple bit of character math turned into one of the most unexpected controversies in Jetsons fandom.
How much did you say it was?
Number 12. The Jetsons' future was built on recycled animation. Hanna-Barbera was pushing primetime ambitions on a Saturday morning budget, and the Jetsons became one of their most extreme experiments in animation recycling. Walk cycles, gesture loops, hallway shots, even full family group poses were reused across episodes, sometimes flipped, recolored, or dropped into new settings without changing a single frame. This wasn't laziness. It was survival. Producing a futuristic world meant building tons of backgrounds, floating vehicles, monorails, and sky platforms. To make that possible, the animators cut corners everywhere else, creating a library of repeatable motions they could plug into nearly any scene. The result is a show that feels visually rich without ever showing how thin the production really was. Behind those sleek flying cars and chrome cities was a team stretching every second of animation like elastic just to keep Orbit City alive.
Of course, that's it. I'll go over George's head.
Number 13. The Jetsons LP used a completely different cast. Right when the show premiered, Hanna-Barbera pushed a 1962 album called The Jetsons New Songs of the TV Family of the Future. You'd think it would star the same actors from the series, but almost none of the TV cast appears on it. George is voiced by Herb Duncan. Elroy and Rosie are played by different performers altogether, and even the narration uses a substitute voice. It wasn't a mistake. It was marketing. The studio rushed the LP to ride the excitement of the show's debut, even though the real cast was busy recording episodes. The fastest solution was to hire a separate group of singers and actors who could mimic the characters well enough for a children's audio release. For many kids in 1962, this album was their first exposure to the Jetsons, which means an entire generation met George Jetson through a version of him that doesn't sound like George Jetson at all.
You know, I think we're carrying this dog love a bit too far.
Number 14. The show flopped, then became a syndication monster. When the Jetsons aired in 1962, ABC positioned it as a futuristic primetime hit, but it never had a chance. It was thrown into a brutal Sunday night slot directly against Disney's Wonderful World of Color and Dennis the Menace, and most viewers couldn't even see the show in color, its main selling point. Ratings slid fast, and ABC quietly canceled it after 1 season. But once the show entered reruns, everything flipped. In the late 60s and 70s, CBS and NBC began airing The Jetsons as a Saturday morning staple, and kids suddenly treated it like a brand new series. The audience grew so large that by the mid-80s, Hanna-Barbera invested heavily to create 41 new episodes at a much bigger budget. So, a primetime disappointment became a syndication powerhouse. And that second life is the reason The Jetsons became one of the most recognizable cartoons in TV history.
Wizard, it's me, Withers. I've got a court order to repossess Charles has.
Number 15. Jane Jetson was cast to evoke a 1940s sitcom mom. Jane Jetson didn't just sound like a classic sitcom mother, she literally was one. Hanna-Barbera cast Penny Singleton, the actress who played Blondie in the wildly popular Blondie film series from the 1930s and 40s. It was a deliberate move to anchor this futuristic family in a voice audiences already associated with domestic comedy. The studio wanted the Jetsons to feel like a space-age extension of shows people already trusted, and Singleton's warm, familiar tone made the Jetson household feel traditional, even while the world around them was pure chrome and sky traffic. Her casting tied the most futuristic cartoon on TV to one of the most old-fashioned sitcom archetypes of the era. That contrast became part of the show's charm, a modern-looking family with a mother shaped by decades of classic Hollywood homemaker roles. Beneath the gadgets and flying cars, Jane's voice kept the Jetsons firmly rooted in old-school Americana.
Thanks, Georgie. Keep up the good work.
But where's my share?
Number 16. The Jetsons used live-action footage behind the scenes. Hanna-Barbera didn't have the luxury of big animation budgets, so their artists relied on a trick usually associated with Disney. They filmed themselves acting out scenes. Layout artists would record co-workers pushing imaginary buttons, pretending to float in zero gravity, or doing the exaggerated stiff body language they thought people in the future might use. These homemade reference clips weren't fancy. They were shot on cheap cameras in hallways, offices, and sometimes even parking lots, with animators miming actions that would later be simplified into limited animation poses. But the technique helped the studio keep the futuristic world consistent without adding expensive new animation cycles. It means that behind those polished flying cars and sleek Orbit City backdrops, you're actually watching the movements of real Hanna-Barbera employees, traced, simplified, and turned into the retro future gestures that define the Jetsons. The Jetsons may look simple on the surface, but once you dig into its production, it becomes one of the strangest, boldest, and most influential cartoons ever made. A show that flopped in primetime, borrowed its future from real Los Angeles, got tangled in lawsuits, and accidentally predicted half the technology we use today, all from a single 24-episode season. And the best part? Its impact never faded. Orbit City's shiny world became the template for how generations imagined tomorrow. From flying cars to video calls to robot helpers. A tiny experiment from 1962 ended up shaping the future more than anyone involved could have imagined. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit the hype button. It helps more people discover these classics. And subscribe so you don't miss the next retro journey into the icons that built our childhoods and our future.